Mr. Secretary, welcome to the committee. It's wonderful to see you. You and I served together in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles now some 30 years ago. I had great admiration and respect for your integrity and your work ethic then, and I do today. And I'm grateful for you taking on what may be the most difficult job in the U.S. government today. So thank you for being here. My colleagues have a lot of questions for you, but they don't seem to want to give you the time to answer them. I'd like to ask you about the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. In 2016, the Russians intervened heavily in our election to try to elect Donald Trump. They intervened with a massive social media campaign run out of St. Petersburg. They intervened by hacking the Democratic Party and its emails and releasing them through cutouts. In 2020, the Cybersecurity Agency, having learned from the experience in 2016, I think did an admirable job in protecting our elections infrastructure. Its primary sin, although the Republicans won't say it, is that its then director asserted after the election that it was the most secure election in our history. That was the sin of the agency, doing its job and doing it well. As we look forward to the next presidential election, I want to ask you about what you see as the threats to our elections infrastructure or the threats of misinformation, disinformation from whatever source. I'm particularly concerned about YouTube's recent decision. I think, the Republican badgering has had an effect, and this is part of the effect. YouTube recently decided to, quote, stop removing content that advances false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches occurred in the 2020 and other past U.S. presidential elections. So YouTube has now decided it's not going to remove content it knows to be false. Other social media platforms like Twitter have decided to fire those that would be in the business of security or looking for misinformation, disinformation campaigns from whatever sources. So in light of that changed environment, what do you see as the principal threats to our elections in 2024?
Congressman, I would identify at least three threat streams. One is the threat of disinformation propagated by the nation states of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Two would be the cybersecurity threat, something that we are always vigilant in guarding against. And it is because of that threat that we seek to build redundancies in our election systems to best protect them. And third is something that we saw manifested last year, and that is the threat of physical intimidation of individuals at the voting booth. Those are three threat streams that I can identify right off the bat. We are very focused on each of them. Of course, the physical security is not something that we ourselves provide, but work in collaboration with local jurisdictions and give them advice as to how they can best secure the facility and the integrity of the voting process.
Today, you may have seen it was reported that Rudy Giuliani has acknowledged in a court filing that the statements he was making about these Georgia election workers were just patently false. Those election workers' lives were put at great risk. Some of your own personnel, their lives have been put at great risk by those who would attack our elections or attack efforts to prevent misinformation and disinformation. What efforts can you make to protect election workers and your own staff from these relentless falsehoods advanced to facilitate the campaigns of some of my colleagues, presidential hopeful?
Some of the things that we do, Congressman, is we provide information to state, local, tribal, territorial, and campus law enforcement with respect to the threat streams that we are observing. We also have protective security advisors in each state that give advice to local communities about how best to secure facilities and make them safe areas for people to vote. Those are two examples of the work that we perform.